want to know intimacy. This desire burns in me so deeply, deeper than my desire to act, or entertain, or become prosperous, or famous, successful. It's a burning deep in my core just to be loved. Alchemist love. A really sweet, special love. Will this burning desire in me ever cease? It isn't even sexual. It's love. But perhaps I'm going to have to love myself first. Really learn to respect myself. Really learn to...
Welcome to the Power Hour, 96.1 KEXU, PNN TV on YouTube, radio at the crossroads. Hi, I'm your DJ, Ecstasy, with my love glasses on tonight. And we're here with Debbie Peacock to talk about interpersonal and collective violence in leftist, local leftist, radical, and social justice movement circles, right? So, Debbie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi. Yeah, sure. I do things. I'm here.
What things do you do?
Oh my gosh. I do comedy. To kind of like work with around trauma healing. And I've been doing like community accountability processes and stuff like within kind of supposed like leftist activist communities. For as like alternatives to like prisons and policing and stuff, but like also like can we actually work out? Oh, can I curse on this? Or no, should I not?
No.
I should not. Okay. All right. Good to know. So so can we work out our stuff? Actually figure out like how to separate like behaviors and actions and stuff from like the people and stuff too, and like okay, so what does accountability actually look like? So that's some of what I work on.
Right on. Okay. So, and I just talk to interesting people like you. So, okay. So interpersonal violence. It's an KKK academia word. Academia words. Interpersonal violence, generally taken to mean, and by generally taken to mean, I mean on Wikipedia taken to mean, family and intimate partner violence, community violence, and collective violence, as Wikipedia tells us, is kind of, for example, violence embedded in structures like government agencies, education, schools, and economic violence, right? So there's some common ideas that I've noticed floating around in the ether. And I grew up in Berkeley. I grew up in a setting that I think most people would say is really permissive, very liberal, and very and it pays a lot of lip service to like nonviolence and gentleness and being loving and people being loving to people and caring about people, right? But I want to talk about the common idea that money or beauty or age gives a person more talent, more insight, and more wisdom. But what about the idea that the pain a person suffers as part of their oppressed identity, makes them more caring or more perceptive or more likely to be truthful and accountable? What about that? Have you ever run into anything like that?
I think about like people in positions of power, like can talk, or it can be really easy to it can be it can be really easy to fall into like a lot of the traps, so in terms of the if like running an organization or like even just even a dynamic of like in a family and stuff, it's like, okay, well, like I had a lot of like family violence and stuff too, and it's like I was a kid, like I didn't have a whole lot of like power in that situation, so I'm thinking about also there's like like money capital or whatever, but then there's like all the stuff around like social capital, right? So the ways that people can use popularity in like whatever, like in like high school or whatever, or like Bay Area activist scene, which is basically high school, You know, so and that's the thing, right? Like I came to the Bay 14 years ago too to like escape a lot of violence. Thinking I was like, oh, where do people have? I was like working at this terrible nonprofit in DC that was like super like top down and very like, you know, whatever, like a lot of nonprofits. And, and so then, and I was like, where do people have things figured out? The Bay! Because like this reputation, you know, of like what I thought it was. And then I came here and I was like, this is a mess. You know, like, this is like what's, you know, because, and then it was also like, who are the people I'm around? And how do we, me too, talk a really big game? Like that, like lip service, right? You're talking about like the, like a Berkeley kind of feel or whatever.
Right, like lip service to these ideals, and kind of like the assumption that because we have certain political ideals or political leanings, that in our personal lives that we are going to be more just or more equitable or more honest.
Yeah, you gotta practice that. Like, that's not like something like I learned. I feel like people learn at a young age how to be like terrible people. You know? And so
I went to school.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I was schooled, like, you know, like at school, like through my parents and my relatives and stuff, like through my like religious community, like all these messages all the time. So why would activist community be any different, as if we're somehow disconnected? And then also who gets to call themselves like an activist and wear it as like a shield or whatever to be like, oh no, I'm not. I'm like good, like I'm good. That it's for me to be good, someone else has to be bad, right? And so, so instead of actually looking at like a behavior and stuff, and being like, how do we actually treat each other better, and actually check the like power that's happening in the situation.
Thank you. So, you know, I want to, the reason that we're sitting here talking really is because in my copious amounts of free time, I was on Facebook and I saw that you posted something, and it really, reading it really affected me, and I want to read it with your permission.
Sure.
I want to read it now. It says, Debbie Peacock Facebook post. Since the beginning of the year, 6 queer and trans people of color have shared with me that they're experiencing bullying and emotional abuse from other QTPOC, but are too afraid to say anything because the people harming them are activists who are popular on social media and in public. So it seems to me like this is kind of maybe an example of what we were just talking about, which is, you know, people having a certain like a public face or a persona, but it not really translating into their private life. Yeah.
Oh, and can I tell you what happened behind the scenes with that post?
I would love to hear that.
Okay, secrets. So what happened was when I posted that thing, so then there's all the public comments, right?
Right.
And so a lot of people, you know, were like liking it, and then some people were like, oh my god, like that spoke to me or whatever, and then someone said this thing, and then someone started like harassing the person who posted, you know, or being like, well, that's messed up, or, you know, like that kind of thing. So all that's going on. Meanwhile, I got so many messages, like Facebook messages, texts, like people coming up to me being like, oh, was that about me? What did you hear about me? Like, why are you putting my stuff on blast? Like, it was like, it became like a full-time kind, like, it was so many people. It wasn't like 5 or 10 people. Like, that's the level within like 2 days of this post.
Wow. Right? So what does that say? I mean, what does that say about the situation that we're working with?
I know, right? It's like, you know, how, first of all, everybody thinks it's, yeah, like in terms of like this bullying culture, that is like, I feel like that's like activist training. You know, like that's when I came here, you know, like it's a thing, being like, oh, this is how to show up in communities. Like, I need to tear someone down. I need like cool points or scene points to actually do the thing, you know, so like, you know, and then also, so it can be like, how do I get points in this game, right, of like being down, which then I can turn into something else. I can turn it into friendships, I can turn it into a job, I can turn it into, you know, like all the different things that I can do with this, you know, with this popularity, which I'm like, oh my god, it's like Mean Girls, like that show, you know, like, and so, So it says that, and then also I think it talks about the culture of fear, that it is like really scary. You know, like people are like really, really scared. And I've had a bunch of people being like, oh, don't trust that person is a narc. Don't trust that person, that's, you know, like, because they're, and I'm like, yeah, narcs totally exist. Like that is a thing. And also, I'm not trying to live my life like surrounded by this idea of fear all the time, like with this, like that's gonna freeze everything that we do, you know. So that's, and then I also have had a lot of people. Okay, this happens all the time. So I also am part of this arts organization, and every production, every single production will have someone be like, always a different person, will be like, you need to ban this other person from your show, because, you know, so there'll be a thing being like, okay, I have a restraining order against them. I have, you know, that person is messed up because they, you know, said this thing, and when we dig deeper and stuff, so our thing is like, we don't actually ban people in community. Like we're like, okay, when people harm, our general kind of thing is for most things. That's what's happened so far.
Right.
Is that we've been like, look, if someone is harming you or in a situation or whatever, like that, like icing them out of a community is not going to make them stop harming.
Right.
Like they're just going to harm in another community. We see this all the time. So how do we deal with our stuff in community? And actually think about it this way. This is the thing about being like where we're so disposable, and that's another piece, is that I feel like there's this thing about like that people are disposable. Like you say one thing that's like off.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
you're
like
you're just excommunicated.
Yeah, totally. And it's like, how do we ever get to learn and make mistakes? You know, like learn from mistakes. Then people just aren't going to stop saying stuff.
Yeah.
Or, you know, and so then they're trying to like work up this ladder about being like, oh, I need to attack you. I need to go even harder with the attack, you know? So then there's a pylon. So the other thing is, I also was a moderator of this Facebook group. It was queer and trans people of color in Bay Area Facebook group. There were 3,000 members, and so I posted this thing. This was a couple years ago. I posted this thing, and it was like, hey, we got some reports that there are a bunch of white people in the group. We are asking that folks, we're not trying to like guess who is like a white person, who's a person of color. We're not trying to play that game. But what we do want to do is that, like, you know, as moderators, we're going to ask you and know that we're trying to come from a place of love. This isn't about targeting anyone. What it is trying to do is be like, look, this is supposed to be a space where queer and trans people of color can talk as, you know, right, you know, like the basics, right? But I was like, and what we're also trying to do is like, have a real conversation around the power and privileges that like light-skinned people have in this group and stuff. And I got, when that happened, we had like over 100 comments, like pretty quickly, right? And so, and people were like, these are all the reasons why you're messed up. I was banned from events. I was banned from, so all of these things started happening, right? People came up to me who I didn't know at like different parties and stuff. Were like, you need to go.
So it sounds like thought police, really. I mean, you know, the right, you know, I'm not, I'm definitely left of left here. Just that's my political cred. But, you know, I hear the right all the time, like accusing people on the left of being like, oh, thought police, and you know, they've turned politically correct, which was a joke. They've turned the term politically correct into a like an indication of policing. I hate it that that's what this sounds like, though, you know, but it's not really deployed. I've noticed that a lot of times it's not really deployed one-on-one. It's not really deployed against people who are, you know, who we would consider wrong thinking, like racists, or people who are, you know, like our relatives who are sexist, or racist, you know, or homophobic. You know, it gets deployed within our communities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, and then some of the things that have come up, this is like for real. I cannot make this up. Some people wanted other people banned from like our shows or events and stuff, because of the way their ex dumped them. You know, broke up. They're like, you know, like things like that. And I'm like, that's like next level. You're trying to make sure this person don't come to this event. We literally had someone try to do that at our event. It was called Tenderfest, a queer and trans people of color community love extravaganza. And so that event, that whole thing started, that show was because somebody did a public call out of me. They didn't name me, nothing.
Right.
But they did all the things that were like, okay, it's like real clear about who it is, you know. So I was like, all right, well I could fight this. I could disappear in community. I could do a lot of things. Instead, what if we built a show that was like, how do we actually, when this stuff happens, because it happens all the time, how do we deal with it?
Right.
You
Yeah.
know?
God, that's great.
And then it happened at the show. So someone at the show, a volunteer was like, you can't, to like another one of the volunteers was like, you can't come to this event because you just broke up with me and now I don't feel safe. And so then the language, right, of like how like there's also actually like the language of safety, you know,
Right.
used, right? Say, I'm like, oh, you don't feel safe or you don't feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Let's like actually be real clear about what we're talking about.
Thank you. Wow, that is that's amazing. You know, I mean, as a person of color, as a Black woman, I have sat in college classrooms. I've sat in classrooms and had arguments with all of the rest of the class about things, you know, about certain things like, you know, political things or stances or whatever. And I've had, you know, like 4 people at once who are facing me in my little seat in the classroom tell me, I'm feeling threatened by you, you know. And again, I'm surprised that it gets deployed so often in activists, in our circles, in our activist circles. Can I ask you about interpersonals, because the Facebook post that I read, it was talking about IP violence between violence between intimate partners. So the community factor, I think we've talked about that. It seems like most lefty and radical movements, it seems like mostly our movements frown on like beating and bullying, right? So I mean, where does it come from? Right?
Yeah.
You know, a better world is possible. I mean, does that extend to the bedroom?
Okay, so here's the thing. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think like how, you know, I got involved in activist work because the main thing that was going on in my community was like the Klan, right? And where I lived. So that's how I got, and I never healed from that trauma, you know, like my first death threat or my first, you know, like that kind of stuff.
Right.
And then, you know, and then I tried to address it in part by like going into like nonprofits, you know, and so then, right, and so like that's
we all,
yeah, you
yeah.
know,
Yes.
because it's like, yeah, this is how it works. This is a lot of work, and I also want to get paid, you know, and it's a lot of so. I'm trying to do that, but then all the harm that comes in there, and I'm like, yeah, these are structures. Also, I'm like, yeah, okay, who were these set up by? How is the whole, you know? So then there's all of that. And then for me, then I moved. I was like, okay, I need to get away from all this. So I'm gonna move somewhere else. Instead of dealing with my stuff where I was. I was like, oh, I'm gonna come to the Bay and get some healing, right? And so then, but then I'm working 70, 80 hours a week. I'm exhausted. I'm not working on my own trauma healing,
Right.
you know. So then, and how am I gonna possibly show up really well for myself? If I can show up well for myself, how am I gonna show up like for a partner? You know, how am I gonna show up? And I think it's like there's so much trauma and so much stress and all this that's coming from also just living our lives plus everything else. And that's not to excuse interpersonal violence ever. I think it's a thing.
These are the root causes. These are factors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it comes from like structures of like our people being pushed down for so long. You know, I think is like also a real thing. And then not to say that it's also just our folks, right? It's like a lot of how much I hear like also like super like rich white straight men harming all the time, not only through the corporations they run and all the things, but also like their partners and stuff too. So it's like
this is what it is. This is what we're talking about, really. We're talking about power, you know. How do we manage these kinds of conflicts or these violence between people or communities when both of the communities have complex oppressed identities? and this is in part, I saw that in the comments on your post, and it stuck with me. I mean, we have people in this room, we have people at POR, who've been in conflict, and you're, sometimes you want it to be simple. You want to say, oh, well, you know what, you're lighter than me, so you have more privilege than I do, so why are you coming at me like that? Well, I am, you have a lot more money or educational privilege than I do. So, how do we talk about things like that when we have these, when we have these identities that are, yeah, sorry. You know what I mean, right?
Sorry. I mean, I think there are a lot of people who need to say sorry.
Yeah.
So, I don't. From that, okay,
Yeah.
and that's part of it, right?
Yeah.
And then the other thing is like, as if we don't come from communities who have been thinking about this for thousands of years.
Right.
So I think that's another piece, right? Is that like restorative circles, for example. I'm like thinking about like, when there's conflict, at least this is what my parents told me. Who knows what's real? But my parents would tell me, like, if there was like someone had like people had beef with each other in community, the community would sit in a circle and talk it out until we actually, to like actually deal with it. And it might mean that people take a pause from each other for a bit.
Right.
And then also it's not just, so then I want to separate conflict from abuse.
Okay.
So I think that's the thing. That book, like, Conflict is Not Abuse. Like, that thing, I didn't read it. But, but I hear it's like a big thing, and like activists are like talking about, because people keep saying abuse when they're actually talking about conflict.
Right.
But, okay, conflict is not abuse, but also abuse is not conflict. So where's that book? I want that book. So, what I mean? So I think when we talk about it's like it ain't so simple. When is it ever simple around these things and like these different dynamics? So, but what's also true is that going real fast into like, oh, you're messed up because this set of things, like that kind of stuff, without actually going into like committing to being in relationship with each other. Like, people don't have to be like together forever. Like, if any of it fit, like that kind of stuff, that's fine. But like, can we be in community though?
Right.
Can we at least hold each other in the dignity of like being human in this world?
Yeah.
And then there's that book, right? I think that's why that book came out. The revolution revolution starts at home.
Right.
Confronting violence in activist communities.
Right.
And it's like there's like creative interventions, has like a whole toolkit, and that came out of like, women of color who are survivors of violence, and from their partners who they don't want to send to jail or prison. They're not trying to send another man of color, right? Yeah.
Color or woman of color to prison.
Yeah.
Well, I want to identify my positionality. I'm a black woman. I identify as het cis. I want to know. This may sound really ignorant, but is it better in queer community? I mean, relationships, interpersonal violence. Is there less of it? I mean, it seems like from everything that I've been taught in this heterocentric society, is that violence, intimate partner violence, is male on female. Well, how does that play out when you're genderqueer?
I will give an example. So we
not that you're the spokesperson.
Okay,
but.
I mean, because that's the thing, right?
Why not?
Speak. I would see that, and I'm like, oh, I would love that power, but I wouldn't. I mean, but maybe I would. I don't know. So that's the thing. Is like, is that it's not necessarily more or less. It's just different. I mean, I don't even have stats on this, and even if we had info on this, then I don't even know how much is, because everything is like. How much, I think almost all violence is just not talked about, right? Because that's also part of the culture.
That's true, yeah.
But I also know that I hear, if there's a week where I don't hear about like an intimate, like violence in community, I'll be shocked, right? And I'll be like, oh, maybe I just forgot to check Facebook today. So like, that's a real thing,
Yeah.
And so... Yeah, I think it's everywhere, and I think it takes generations to actually ends, you know, and this stuff, and
sometimes generations to acknowledge it.
yeah, oh my gosh,
And
yeah.
then ending, yeah, yeah.
And it's like, you know, intimate partner violence ain't gonna end until, I think, until capitalism ends, right? Like it's all tied together. There's no way to end it without ending. Sorry, yeah. Okay, a friend just walked. Okay,
Bye.
What's going on, viewers? So. Yeah, you know, like I think that's part of it. It's like
it's true, we live in a predatory capitalist society, so that engenders violence on all levels of our society. Yeah. Can you say one last thing? Can you say a little bit about activists and celebrities in the movement?
Oh my god, one thing? I could say like 12. Alright, so Mactivist, yeah.
What is a Mactivist?
Mactivist is like, okay, and I fall for them every time. I am not proud.
Sexy.
It is just, and that's part of the hustle, right? That's part of their scam. And so it's like, oh, I'm gonna show up with my like Che Guevara, you know, like you know, T-shirt, and then like a book of poems in the, you know, you know, in the pocket and whatever, and I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna treat you so good, and like, you know, like that kind of stuff for like a little bit, until I hook you in. And I'm going to talk the big game, and then I'm going to treat you like garbage, right? And so that's, I'm going to keep doing it over and over and over in community. So, you know, so the organization and the arts group I'm part of, it's mostly trans women of color.
And what's it called again?
Oh, it's called Peacock Rebellion, and it gets a lot of, we're like, you know, it's that thing, it's like we're sexy right now to like the thing, and I'm like, oh, I'll give it 3 more years. And then these funders are going to move on, and they're going to, you know, like, treat, you know, so I'm like, oh, they're going to treat us, you know, tokenize us for these couple years, and then they're going to forget about us.
Yeah.
But what's also happening is that there's, like, some folks are kind of glomming onto that, I mean, like, oh, they need to prove their, like, themselves, like, how down they are by kind of connecting with us. And so, yeah, so then they're, like, a bunch of activists who are, like, trying to, like, date their way through our, like, crew of like artists and like people who, you know, like, and they'll be like,
their way into the movement.
Yeah, you know, and I'm like, okay, and look, you know, plenty of ways to like show up in movements, right? And like, but like, how about actually just like treat your partners better? How about that? Like, start with that, you know?
Yeah, that's true. And how do activists relate to celebrities in the movement?
All right, so what happened was,
give me the tape.
All right, so I found out, this is just one example. I found out that this other organization wrote Peacock into one of their grants. Yeah. All right.
Wow.
Yeah. Without telling us. So I found out from a friend. They sent that to, they were like, oh, this organization is gonna like do these 4 events, including this one thing featuring, it's going to be a night of comedy featuring all trans women of color, co-produced with Peacock Rebellion. And I was like, that's good to know, because that is our core program. That is how we get our money.
Right.
That is how we, you know, that is the thing we do. That is
the
what
2
we
of
train.
them, they're great.
Yeah. Thank you. You know, and so stuff on, you know?
Right.
And so they wrote that to get money from the funder that we write to for that grant, you know, for that program. You know, so it's competing with our thing.
Cool.
They didn't tell us. Someone else told us, and then we were like, all right, so what do we do? So then we tried to do the thing, you know, in community. We're like, reached out to them. We're like, can we have a conversation?
Right.
And then they were like, it wasn't us, it wasn't us, it wasn't us, it wasn't us. And we were like, really? Because here's the grant. You know? Really? That's weird. You know, and so, yeah, that kind of, and they're like, oh, we blame the, like, grant writer or whatever. And we blame the, I'm like, really? You didn't tell them to write this? Because I'm like, I know how this game works. You didn't tell them?
Wow.
You know? And then they were like, okay, I'll take responsibility because obviously this person won't who wrote the, and I'm like, no, it's because that's your job. You messed up. That's how you do it. You got caught. Then you just tell us.
Apologize.
Yeah, it's not hard, you know? And so And I was like, this is what we want. So our ask, we talked to our people and we are like, this is what we want. We want you to, the funder didn't make the decision yet. Right?
Uh-huh.
And so it was like a community panel that decides.
Right.
So we were like, tell the staff person who like, they don't impact whether you get the grant or not. We're like, we want you to call the staff person and take us out of the grant and tell them that you put us in the grant without checking with us. That's it.
Right.
That feels like make it right.
That's fair. Yeah.
The panelists won't even know. So they were like, yeah, we'll do that. And so then months went by, the panel met and made their decision. And then we get the email over the summer that was like, oh, we decided not to do that because someone told us it would jeopardize our grant, our funding. Yeah.
What?
So, and then the organization went public saying that we were attacking them.
Oh my God!
Right? And so, in terms of the power dynamics that
Right.
we're looking at, like this is an organization run by a lot of like activist celebrities.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about power, we lost funding, not just we lost all that stuff. So that's just one example.
Wow. So celebrity equals celebrity equals a lack of accountability a lot of times.
I think so.
Wow.
Yeah.
I am so God, I am so angry that happened to you. But I'm so glad that you came to speak with us. Debbie Peacock, everybody. Peacock Rebellion. Can you tell our fans where we can experience your wonderfulness?
Oh yeah. So check us out, peacockrebellion.org. We have clips from our shows and stuff. It's all free. Yeah, check us out on Facebook and stuff, and we have a lot of new stuff coming out this summer. So.
Okay, beautiful. Okay, this is DJ Ecstasy with your lovey love glasses. KEXU 96.1 Radio at the Crossroads and PNN TV on YouTube. Check us out. Mwah.